Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to uncover something really fascinating, the hidden mechanics of successful innovation. Have you ever wondered why two companies can have the exact same resources, the exact same access to top-tier talent, the same media agencies, but one completely changes the world while the other just kind of fizzles out? It's a giant puzzle, honestly. So let's dive right into this by comparing two massive tech giants, Apple and TiVo.
It really all boils down to this one core question. Why is it that some innovations completely fail, even when they seem to have the absolute perfect recipe for success? It's one of the true mysteries in the business world. We see these products that look absolutely flawless on paper, engineered to total perfection, right? Yet they launch and just fail spectacularly in the real world. Why on earth does that happen?
See, most of us kind of just assume business success is this simple, predictable formula. The standard recipe usually includes three main things: proper capitalization, hiring the right people, and launching into fantastic market conditions. Basically, money, talent, and timing. If you ask anyone why a specific company failed, they'll usually point to a lack of one of those three things. They ran out of money, they hired the wrong management team, or the market was just bad. But what happens when you have all three of those things locked down, and you still fail?
And well, this brings us to what I like to call the ultimate paradox, which is perfectly embodied by TiVo. Think back to when TiVo first came on the scene. They had the single highest quality product on the market, hands down, no dispute. They were extremely well funded, and the market conditions were absolutely fantastic. I mean, we literally use the word TiVo as a verb. They had every single ingredient you could possibly want for massive commercial success. The whole shebang.
Yet, despite having literally everything going for them, TiVo is a commercial failure. $10. When TiVo went to their IPO, their stock was around $30 or $40 a share, but then it plummeted, and it has rarely traded above that low $10 mark since. How is that even possible? How does a product so undeniably good, with a brand name so ubiquitous, fail to actually make money?
So it gives. Well, look at their actual pitch to consumers. They came out and said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, and rewinds live TV. They pitched their features, the what. And the cynical majority out there essentially heard that and said, yeah, we don't believe you, we don't need it, and honestly, you're kind of scaring us. But imagine, just for a second, what if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, it skips commercials. Do you see the difference there? They pitched their features instead of pitching their purpose, and it cost them everything.
And this right here brings us to a brilliant concept, perfectly summarized by Simon Sinek. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. It is such a remarkably simple concept, but it completely flips traditional marketing right on its head. What you actually do, that simply serves as a tangible proof of what you believe. So this builds into a much larger framework that Sinek calls the Golden Circle. It's an incredibly powerful tool for inspiring communication. Picture a target in your mind. The outer ring is what you do, the results. Every single person and organization on the planet knows exactly what they do, 100%. Now the middle ring is how you do it. Maybe it's your proprietary process or your unique selling proposition. Some companies know this, but the center ring, the absolute bullseye, is why. And just to be clear, we don't mean making a profit. Making money is just a result. What is your true purpose, your cause, your underlying belief? The crazy thing is, very few organizations actually know their why. And as a result, most of them communicate from the outside in. What, then how, then maybe why. But the truly inspired leaders, the ones who change the game, they communicate from the inside out.
Now, here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. This framework, it perfectly mirrors the actual biology of the human brain. Leading with your heart isn't just nice marketing poetry, it's literal science. The newest part of our brain, the neocortex, corresponds perfectly to the what level of the Golden Circle. It handles rational, analytical thought and language. But the middle sections, your limbic brain, correlate directly to the how and the why.
When we zoom in on that limbic brain, we find it's the part responsible for all of our deep feelings, things like trust and loyalty. But more importantly for us, it controls all decision-making and drives all human behavior. And here is the absolute kicker. The limbic brain has zero capacity for language. None. This perfectly explains why feature dumping, telling people all the facts, the figures, all the specs, doesn't actually drive behavior. People can logically understand the complicated information with their neocortex, sure. But the part of the brain that makes the actual purchase decision, it doesn't process language at all. That's why we rely so heavily on our gut feelings. That's why we find ourselves saying things like, well, I know what all the facts say, but it just doesn't feel right.
The Apple contrast. Inside-out communication.
Let's pivot for a second and look at a company that has totally mastered this biological communication.
Structurally speaking, Apple is really just a computer company. They're no different than any of their competitors. They have the exact same access to the same talent, the same media, and the same agencies. If they were like everyone else, their standard outside-in marketing message might sound something like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use. Want to buy one? Pretty uninspiring, right? It's just okay. But listen to their actual inside-out message. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed and simple to use. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? It is a totally different feeling. By simply reversing the order of the information, they are bypassing the analytical brain and speaking directly to the limbic brain, the exact part that controls behavior.
And the real-world result of that inside-out communication? It is staggering. I mean, think about it. Dell made MP3 players and nobody bought them. Apple made MP3 players and we bought millions of them. Why is that? Dell makes great quality products, they are eminently qualified to make MP3 players, but buying an MP3 player from a computer company that just pitches its technical features, it feels weird to our limbic brain. It just feels wrong. But because Apple sells their why, their core belief in challenging the status quo, we are perfectly comfortable buying phones, MP3 players, and tablets from them. It makes total sense to us.
Now, to really understand why this purpose-driven messaging is absolutely required for mass market success, we have to look at the law of diffusion of innovation. Basically, our population breaks down into very specific segments. The first 2.5% are our innovators. The next 13.5% are the early adopters. Then you have the early majority sitting there at 34%, followed by the late majority and the laggards. The rule here is simple. If you want mass market acceptance of an idea, you have to move from left to right across this scale.
And here's the magic number, 15 to 18%. That is the crucial tipping point for mass market acceptance. You literally cannot have mass market success until you achieve this tipping point. Once you hit that 15 to 18% mark, boom, the system tips. Any business can stumble their way into 10% of customers. Those are the folks who just naturally get it right away. But getting past that, closing that gap to actually hit the tipping point, that is the real challenge.
That exact challenge is what's famously known as crossing the chasm. It's this perilous gap sitting right between the early adopters and the early majority. And the catch is, the early majority is fundamentally, stubbornly practical. They absolutely will not try something until somebody else has tried it first. They need solid proof. So the big question becomes, how do you get those early folks on board so they can eventually convince that massive practical majority?
Well, to cross that chasm, you absolutely have to attract those innovators and early adopters, because these groups, they buy with belief. They are super comfortable making intuitive, gut decisions driven by what they fundamentally believe about the world, rather than just what product happens to be sitting on a shelf. They buy to outwardly demonstrate their own internal beliefs. Just think about the people who stood in line for 6 hours to buy the very first iPhone. They could have easily just walked into the store a week later and bought one off the shelf with zero hassle. But they didn't stand in the sweltering heat for the technology. They did it for themselves. They wanted the whole world to see that they were first. They were proving who they were.
Which brings us right back to our anchor mantra for this entire explainer, really cementing our core takeaway here today. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. See, the goal of your business shouldn't be to just do business with everybody who happens to need what you have. That's a trap. The true goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. When you start with why, you inspire those early adopters, and they are the ones who then cross the chasm and tip that early majority for you.
So I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought. Are you selling your features, or are you selling your beliefs? I really challenge you to reflect on your own messaging, whether you're pitching a product, a service, or hey, even just pitching yourself. If you're out there just listing your features, your what, you might end up exactly like TiVo, absolutely perfect on paper, but struggling to inspire any real action. But if you can clearly communicate your why, you just might attract the fiercely loyal believers you need to actually change the world. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this completely shifts how you think about value, and I'll see you next time.